Welcome to the Deep Dive, Whispers of Crime Edition. Today we're looking at a case that, honestly, it's not just a true crime story. It's a story about a complete and terrifying collapse of every single system that's supposed to protect a child.
It really is.
Yeah.
The horror here isn't just about one person's actions. It's about how an entire city's infrastructure failed. And the monster wasn't some stranger in the shadows. He was an employee with a city-affiliated ID badge.
Exactly. And to really understand the scale of this, we have to start with the hooks of the story, the things that they get under your skin. The first one is that Relisha Rudd became the ghost child, an 8-year-old who vanished while officials watched.
She was literally invisible, not just to one person, but to every single adult, every agency that was legally mandated to ensure her safety. She just faded away.
And she faded away because of the janitor's secret. A predator hiding in plain sight at a safe shelter. He was right there every day, a trusted figure in what should have been a secure environment.
And that brings us to the timeline, which is maybe the most shocking part of this entire thing. This wasn't a sudden event. It was a slow-motion disaster.
Yeah, get this. 31 days of silence, the horrifying truth about when she was last seen, an entire month.
A full month passed from the time she was last definitively seen alive to the moment the authorities realized they had a crisis on their hands. It's staggering.
It is. So let's lay out the basic facts. We're talking about Relisha Rudd, an 8-year-old girl. In March of 2014, she vanished from the D.C. General Family Homeless Shelter in Washington, D.C. This was her home. She lived there with her mother, Shamika Young, and her siblings.
And that right there is the core of the horror. That 31-day window you mentioned, if a child goes missing from a suburban home, an Amber Alert goes out in hours. Police are canvassing the neighborhood.
Of course.
But Relisha was living in a facility that was literally run by the city, supervised by the government. And in that environment, she was allowed to just cease to exist for a month.
It just begs the question that haunted D.C. then, and frankly still does now. How on earth could a child disappear for 31 days while living inside a government-run facility?
That's the question. And answering it, it pulls back the curtain on a level of systemic failure that is truly, truly sickening. It wasn't just an oversight. It was, as the records show, a documented process of neglect that created the vacuum for this to happen.
Okay, we are going to unpack every layer of that failure. But before we continue, we just want to ask you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Whisper of Crime, and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all major podcast platforms.
Yeah, and if you like this deep dive, please leave your comments. It really helps. Also, go back and listen to our previously released episodes on other cases that demand justice. Your support is what helps us shine a light on these forgotten voices.
So to understand how Relisha became invisible, you have to start with the place itself. D.C. General Shelter, a converted hospital hiding systemic rot.
Right. This place wasn't designed to be a home. It was the former District of Columbia General Hospital. Its history is really important to understanding the whole situation.
So it was a hospital. For how long?
For a very long time. It was operational from 1806.
Yeah.
For most of its life, it was the city's only public hospital. It served the absolute poorest, most vulnerable people in D.C.
A place of last resort, basically?
The last resort. Some sources even described its earlier incarnations as the city's poorhouse. So it always had this stigma. By the 1990s, it was falling apart, constantly underfunded, and the city finally shut it down in 2001 to cut costs.
And then they turn around and make it the city's main family homeless shelter.
Exactly. So you take this massive, crumbling, old institution, a place that already felt like a symbol of abandonment, and you put the most vulnerable families in the city inside it. A government review later noted that the families there had, and this is a quote, very complex needs.
Which is code for what, exactly?
It's code for generational poverty, housing instability, mental health struggles, often substance abuse issues. These are families who are already deeply entangled with multiple social service agencies.
So you're basically warehousing society's most difficult problems in a building that was already a failure.
That's a perfect way to put it. You're creating this breeding ground for chaos and instability. And this directly connects to something sociologists call the tightrope effect.
Okay, what's that?
It's the idea that for a family trapped in that cycle of poverty and homelessness, their life is already a tightrope walk. They have zero safety net. They're stretched to their absolute limit every single day.
So any little thing can send them over the edge.
Any small thing.
A missed
paycheck, a sick day, or in this case, a predator who sees that vulnerability and a system that's too broken to notice him.
For Relisha's family, being in D.C. General meant they were already in a state of crisis. The system had failed them long before they even got there. And that inherent vulnerability is, I guess, exactly what this janitor, Khalil Tatum, was looking for. Let's talk about Relisha's family and background.
Right. So she's living in the shelter with her mother, Shamika Young, and her siblings. And we have to talk about Shamika Young's controversial role in all of this because it's deeply troubling.
What do the records say?
The official sources all confirm it. Shamika gave the janitor, Khalil Tatum, permission to spend time with Relisha. A lot of time.
Permission for a staff member to, what, just hang out with her daughter?
More than hang out. She allowed him to take Relisha on day trips. He would buy her gifts, take her out of the shelter, and eventually this escalated to him taking her on unauthorized overnight trips.
An employee of the shelter was taking an 8-year-old resident on overnight trips, and the mother said it was okay.
The mother approved it. It just speaks to the level of desperation and the complete breakdown of normal boundaries inside that place. It's so far outside the norm, but in that environment, it somehow became accepted.
Was the mother ever held accountable for that?
Well, a grand jury did investigate her later for giving inconsistent statements about where Relisha was and what was happening. But ultimately, she was never indicted on any charges.
So they suspected she wasn't being truthful, but couldn't prove it.
It seems that way. And then you have the wider family context, which is also just heartbreaking. Relisha's father, Irving Rudd, had tried to get custody in 2012, but he only had visitation rights.
Okay.
But his own history is incredibly tragic. In 1992, he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the death of his own 17-month-old daughter.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he was released in 2002. So when you look at the whole picture, the generational trauma, the instability, the violence, Relisha was surrounded by danger long before Khalil Tatum ever entered the picture.
And the system, the city, was just completely blind to all of it, which allowed Khalil Tatum, trusted employee, dangerous predator, to just walk right in.
He walked right in and made himself indispensable. He wasn't just a janitor to them. He started calling himself Dr. Tatum.
Dr. Tatum! What?
He told the family he could help them. Maybe with getting a better housing placement or with medical issues Shamika was having. He was grooming the entire family, not just the child. He bought Relisha tablets, clothes, took her to places like National Harbor. These were not small gestures.
These are those unauthorized outings that became red flags everyone ignored.
They were giant, waving red flags. And this gets us to the institutional policy gaps. I mean, the first question anyone would ask is, why was a janitor allowed to do any of this?
Right. There has to be a rule against that.
There was. The government review that happened later found there was a very strict fraternization policy on the books. It explicitly prohibited relationships between staff and residents.
So what happened to it?
It was completely universally ignored. It wasn't enforced at all. Staff were supposed to report these kinds of relationships, but the review found a massive failure in both documenting and investigating any reports that were made. It was just easier for everyone to look the other way.
It's a symptom of a broken culture. If no one cares, why would you be the one to speak up?
Exactly. But then you have the single most dangerous policy failure. No background checks.
You're kidding.
I'm not. The shelter's policies did not require screening the Child Protective Registry for staff who would be interacting with children.
So a janitor, a contractor, someone who is in the hallways, in the bathrooms all day long around thousands of vulnerable kids, they didn't have to be checked against a list of known child abusers.
That is correct. It's the literal definition of systemic negligence.
Ugh.
They failed to enforce their own rules, and they failed to vet the people they hired. They essentially left the door wide open, and Tatum was the one who decided to walk through it.
This is just, it's setting the stage for the disaster, and that brings us to the actual timeline of the disappearance, the 31 days of system failure, the cover-up.
Right. This is the agonizing part. The last time anyone can definitively say they saw Relisha alive was on March 1st, 2014.
Where was this?
It was on security footage. She was with Tatum walking down a hallway in a local hotel, a Days Inn. That image is the last proof of life we have.
And we will definitely circle back to that hotel. But after March 1st, she's gone from the shelter, and she also stops going to school. That should have set off every alarm bell in the city.
It should have. And this is where the cover-up begins, and it's just so shockingly simple. The forged doctor's note. A simple lie that fooled everyone.
What happened?
The school system, DCPS, they did their job initially. They noticed she was absent, and they started asking questions. So Tatum and Relisha's mother, Shamika Young, worked together.
They collaborated on this.
Yes, they provided the school with a forged doctor's note. A simple handwritten note claiming that Relisha was sick and was receiving treatment at a local hospital under the care of a Dr. Tatum.
He used his fake name on the note.
He did, and the school system accepted it. For weeks. A simple phone call to the hospital he named would have exposed the lie in 5 minutes, but no one made the call.
Why not? I mean, that seems like basic procedure.
Because the system was so siloed and confusing, the school likely assumed that if she was in her medical care, other agencies were involved, and she was accounted for. The lie worked because it exploited the bureaucracy's own dysfunction. That delay was absolutely fatal.
But it wasn't just the school, was it? The government review found much deeper issues.
Oh, much deeper. The review confirmed what they called catastrophic mandatory reporting failures. And this is a complete indictment of the whole social safety net.
Okay, let's just clarify who we're talking about here. Agency-wise, there were a lot of them.
There were. You have CFSA, the Child and Family Services Agency. They're the main child protection body. You have DCPS, the public schools. DHS, the Department of Human Services, which ran the shelter. And DBH, the Department of Behavioral Health.
So 4 huge government agencies, all supposedly watching out for this family.
Right. And the review found multiple documented instances where mandated reporters from these agencies, we're talking shelter staff, social workers in the school, mental health providers, all of them had expressed serious concerns in their own notes about the safety and well-being of the children.
But they didn't report it.
They failed to act. They saw the red flags. They wrote them down in their files, but they never made the official call to the CFSA child abuse hotline.
Why on earth not? That's their legal duty.
This is the most damning part of the whole review. When investigators asked them why they didn't report, some caseworkers said it was because they knew CFSA was so chronically underfunded and overwhelmed that making a report was basically pointless. They believed the agency couldn't or wouldn't intervene effectively anyway.
Wait, so they thought the system was so broken that it was safer for the child to not report the potential abuse?
Think about that. The professionals on the front lines have lost so much faith in the system's ability to protect children that they stop feeding information into it. It's not just a bureaucratic failure, it's a complete moral collapse.
Which created this massive cross-agency breakdown.
A total breakdown. All these agencies were involved with the family. Shamika Young had open case files with several of them, but they weren't talking to each other. They didn't share information. They didn't hold team meetings.
So no one had the full picture.
No one. Imagine it. The school has the weird absences and the fake doctor's note. The shelter has the janitor taking the kid on overnight trips. CFSA might have a file with past concerns. DBH might have notes on the mother's challenges.
But because they're all separate puzzle pieces, no one sees the terrifying image they make when you put them together.
Exactly. They operated in their own little silos, and by doing that, they made Relisha invisible. The system didn't just passively let her vanish. Its own structure actively concealed the danger she was in.
Okay, so the system is failing for weeks. When does it finally break? When does the crisis become real to them?
The crisis point hits on March 19th and 20th, 2014. After all the delays, the police are finally involved, and they realize that this janitor, Tatum, is central to the disappearance. The investigation goes from 0 to 100 overnight.
What triggered that?
A completely horrifying discovery. It's the murder-suicide. Tatum's wife pays the ultimate price. On the very same day that Relisha is finally officially reported missing, the police find the body of Khalil Tatum's wife, Andrea Tatum,
Where was she found?
in a D.C. area motel room. She had been shot in the head.
My God.
And just like that, the creepy but seemingly harmless Dr. Tatum from the shelter is now the prime suspect in a brutal homicide. The timing was just too perfect. As the net is finally closing in on him for Relisha, his whole world comes crashing down.
So police start digging into his movements immediately, I assume.
Instantly. And that leads them to the motel room discovery. Evidence of horror. They start pulling all the security footage from hotels near the shelter, going back to late February and early March.
And they find him with Relisha.
They find him with Relisha repeatedly. But the key footage is from that day's inn on March 1st. That's the last confirmed sighting. But it's the footage from after that sighting that is just bone-chilling.
What does it show?
It shows Tatum leaving the hotel room alone.
And Relisha's not with him.
She's not.
Yeah.
And as he leaves, the camera captures him carrying a large black garbage bag.
Wow.
Yeah. The implication is immediate and horrifying.
Yeah.
It suggests the possibility of murder inside that room and the immediate effort to dispose of her body.
And it gets worse, doesn't it? The hardware store.
It gets much worse. The very next day, March 2nd, he's caught on camera at a local hardware store. And the items he buys, I mean, it's like a checklist for covering up a murder. He bought a shovel, a large bag of lime, and a box of 42-gallon trash bags.
A shovel, lime, and trash bags. There's only one reason to buy that combination of items.
It's for burial and decomposition. The lime is used to accelerate the breakdown of organic material and mask the odor. The bags are big enough for an 8-year-old child. It's premeditated, it's calculated.
And the location of all this is key, right? The hotel, the hardware store.
It is absolutely critical. The Days Inn, where Relisha was last seen alive, is located directly across the street from the National Arboretum.
Which is a huge park.
It's massive. Over 400 acres of dense woods, trails, and secluded areas right in the middle of the city. It's the perfect place if you need to dispose of something in a hurry. The evidence paints a very clear, very grim picture of what likely happened in the hours after that March 1st hotel footage.
This all triggers a massive manhunt and the suicide.
A huge manhunt. After his wife's body is found on the 19th, Tatum vanishes. Police immediately focus their search on the National Arboretum and the surrounding parklands because of those hardware store purchases. They know he was there.
And they find him.
They find his body, yes, but not for weeks. It's not until early April. He was in a small shed in an adjoining park called Kenilworth Park. He had shot himself with the same gun he used to kill his wife.
So he was hiding out there the whole time.
This is a really important detail. The medical examiner's analysis revealed that when his body was found, he had only been dead for about 36 hours.
Wait, so he was found in April, but he'd only been dead for a day and a half.
Exactly. He made those purchases on March 2nd. His wife was found on the 19th. He was found in April. That means he was alive and hiding, unaccounted for at least 11 days after his wife was found. He was likely in or around that park complex watching the search for him unfold before he finally took his own life.
He knew they were closing in, and he took the secret of where Relisha is with him.
He took it to his grave. And that leaves us, even over a decade later, with the one question that still has no answer. Where is Relisha Rudd?
She's still officially a missing person.
She is. 11 years this year. And despite some absolutely massive search efforts, I mean, they've combed through those parks countless times. There were even public calls to search old tunnels underneath the D.C. General Shelter itself.
They searched tunnels.
They looked into it, but nothing. No physical evidence, no remains have ever been recovered.
And what's the prevailing theory among investigators or, people who follow the case online?
The consensus, from law enforcement theories to Reddit threads, all points back to that geographical area. The National Arboretum, Kenilworth Park. That's the most likely place. Some have suggested the nearby Anacostia River, but experts have pointed out that's a risky disposal site. Bodies tend to wash up.
Which is exactly what the lime and the trash bags were meant to prevent.
Right. His purchases suggest he wanted to ensure she would never, ever be found. He didn't just want to hide her, he wanted to erase her, to turn her permanently into a ghost. And so far, tragically, he succeeded.
The lack of an answer is just another layer of cruelty on top of everything else, but this whole tragedy, it did force the city to look in the mirror, right? There was a government review.
There was, a very harsh and very necessary one. It resulted in what are now known as the 29 recommendations that came too late.
And what did they say? I mean, what were the big takeaways?
The review was just brutal in its assessment. It laid the blame squarely on the cross-agency breakdown we talked about. It was a roadmap for fixing the systemic chaos.
Give me some of the specifics. What needed to change?
Well, for one, basic documentation. It sounds simple, but case files were a mess, incomplete, handwritten, impossible to share. So a core recommendation was to create a single shared electronic case management system for all the DC agencies.
So that the school, the shelter, and child services could all see the same file in real time.
Exactly. Something that should have been standard practice for decades. Another big one was contractor oversight. The review mandated much stronger rules for supervising people like Tatum, with mandatory training on boundaries and the fraternization policy.
And what about the background checks?
That was probably the most critical recommendation. They moved to strengthen legislation to require screening of the Child Protective Registry for all staff members in any facility with children, including janitors, cooks, everyone. The idea that this wasn't already law is, it's just mind-boggling.
So these 29 recommendations were a blueprint to fix the system, but they came after the fact. And you have to wonder about the lessons unlearned and the other children left behind.
Right. Relisha's siblings, all the other children still living in that same broken system. The recommendations are on paper, but changing the underlying culture of neglect and disillusionment, That's a much harder task.
So where does the case stand today? What's the latest news on the disappearance of Relisha Rudd as of November 2025?
The tragic answer is that there is no news. Despite the reforms, despite the anniversary pleas from law enforcement every year, there have been no significant developments, no new leads, no discoveries. The case is as cold today as it was a decade ago.
So her case is just this permanent, dark reminder of justice denied.
It really is. She was the perfect victim for a broken system. A child caught between generational poverty on one side and institutional negligence on the other. We focus so much on the monster, on Tatum, but the larger, more terrifying entity here was the bureaucracy itself, the system that chose to look away.
It's what you said at the beginning. She was the ghost child, housed by the city, educated by the city, served by the city's social workers, and yet completely abandoned by all of them. The shame of what happened belongs to the entire system that allowed it.
And because we never found her, because her fate is still unresolved, it means the failures that led to her disappearance haven't really been put to rest. They've been documented, sure, policies have been changed. But that ghost of institutional neglect, you have to believe it still haunts these agencies.
It leaves you with such a disturbing final thought. We focus on the search for Relisha's body, the police digging in the arboretum. But maybe the more provocative question we should be asking ourselves is this. If caseworkers in D.C. in 2014 were so convinced that the system was too broken to even bother reporting abuse, how many other children right now in cities all across this country are being made invisible by those same bureaucratic walls?
It's a chilling question, and I think we owe it to Relisha's memory, not just to say her name, but to constantly challenge these systems that call themselves safety nets, but all too often function as traps.
Don't miss out. Please subscribe to Whisper of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and more. Like this deep dive, and please comment on what stands out to you about this tragic case. And turn on that notification bell for more interesting and scary true crime stories like this.
And please check out our previously released episodes as well.
Thank you for listening.